Thank you for holding this hearing. Thank you to everyone. I guess I'll start with you, Ms. Doe. Thank you for your willingness to come forward and share what you and your family went through. No one should have to do that. You have talked about in your written testimony, given ever-expanding technology now driven by artificial intelligence, every child risks becoming a C-SPAN victim. Senator Cruz and I actually passed a bill called the Take It Down Act that the president signed into law that requires that the platform takes this stuff down on notification from the victim in 48 hours. We've had several suicides and just really horrendous situations around the country. How can a legal right to have these horrible images removed from online platforms help to move forward with your life?
If they create something that can take down these images for all the victims, not just my family, of course, it would impact these children just knowing that someone is out there offering to help them. These images are all over. Everywhere technology is, it's on a tablet, it's on a cell phone. Everywhere you look, there's a way to find these images of their abuse and their terror that they've gone through. If there were laws that were passed in order to get rid of it, it would save the children mentally and physically harm, and not just, it's not going to be immediate, it's going to be a long-term situation, but somebody has to start somewhere to do something, and little steps make the big change.
Thank you. There's obviously more to do, including the Section 230 situation, which I'm sure you know about. Okay, Ms. Sheehan.
Thank you.
NCMEC in 2024 received more than 83,000 requests to remove non-consensual explicit images from online platforms. Could you talk about how the Take It Down bill, now get to the next bill in front of us, strengthen NCMEC's ability to help victims remove the images?
Absolutely, and we appreciate your leadership on that issue. Specifically, we operate a Take It Down program that allows for survivors or their designee to submit hashes related to nude, partially nude, or exploitative material, so that we can utilize those hashes with companies that voluntarily agree to use them to remove the content from their services. We also have other voluntary programs related to hash sharing initiatives, but again, the difference that the Take It Down Act made is adding a legal requirement to remove that content.
Thank you. Mr. Tebow, I was remembering way back zone when you were one of the speakers at the National Prayer Breakfast, and I was co-chairing it with Johnny Isaacson. Do you remember that?
Yes.
You're under oath.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. You did a nice job. Thank you.
Thank
Seems
you.
like a simpler time. I believe that we need, like you do, to give law enforcement resources to quickly identify victims of human trafficking, because the faster a victim can be identified, the faster they can be helped. The Renewed Hope Act seeks to do that. Could you talk about why training is an important part of that act, training of law enforcement?
Because it is very complicated, and unfortunately, those with the goal to do evil many times work better than those with the goal to do good, and they coach one another on how best to avoid detection. We could show you manuals, we could show you chats of them going back and forth of how you can cover up blood, how you don't have to make blood, how your wife doesn't have to find out, over and over and over again, of how they are working together, many times better than the people that are striving for good. And I think training is so important, because a lot of these cases are very complicated. We could tell you so many different stories of, one of the stories from an incredible investigator over a young girl crying, turned down the meta volume from it to be able to hear a bird chirp in the background, and then they went to Cornell Labs to be able to get a specialist to be able to understand where would this type of bird have been at this spot. And ultimately, long story made a lot shorter, they were able to safeguard that boy, because these unique, it's so specialized and it's so hard. And that's why the training, especially for victim identification specialists, is so important.
Thank you. Ms. Bafa, Senator Blackburn arrived, so I think I'll bring up our bill. We lead the National Human Trafficking Database Act to establish a national database at the Department of Justice's Office for Victims of Crime, incentivize state law enforcement to report trafficking data for the database. The shared information is going to help, I think, state and local. Can you talk about how information sharing among local, state, and federal entities empowers law enforcement to protect victims of human trafficking?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that question. It's critical. I mean, information sharing is critical when it comes to issues of human trafficking. Cross-system collaboration, information sharing, it's one of the key components to making sure that not only victims are identified, but that we're able to make sure that victims are reached. So one of the things that we know, especially about survivors, is that they're moved from multiple different states. One of the things that we know from NCMEC, for example, when it comes to survivors who are runaways, survivors who are potentially taken from one state in foster care systems, it's important to be able to report those children. That's one of the reasons why, for example, as part of the 2014 Preventing Sex Trafficking and Strengthening Families Act, we required child welfare systems to report those children to not only NCMEC, but the FBI's NCIC database so that they would be able to be tracked. And so it's very important for that cross-system collaboration and collaboration among all aspects of law enforcement to make sure that we're tracking children, making sure that victims and survivors are being identified as quickly as possible so that intervention can occur.
I won't ask this question now because I'm way out of time, but I noticed you also testified about having offenders pay fines that would help for the education programs, which is part of the bill that Senator Cornyn and I are trying to get done. So I'll put that in writing. Okay.
Sure.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
If you want to say something about that, go ahead.
Yeah, I have much more about
Okay, well,
that.
please go ahead. I just wasn't
Thank you.
trying to be polite, but
No,
please go ahead. Yes.
And I have much more about that in my written testimony, but one of the things that we're seeing as a very promising program and which we lift up in our Buyers Unmasked report are these several-week court-mandated buyer accountability programs where sex buyers essentially have to engage in these group programs and exercises that we have found really change mindsets over time, and we found them to be very promising. We actually include several of the evaluations before and after in our report. They've been incredibly successful, not like your typical John schools, where they try to measure recidivism, which really isn't effective with this population because, as we know, they're not really arrested to begin with. But these have shown to really shift mindsets, and what they do is essentially find the sex buyers, and then what happens is the fines go in to pay for survivor services. So it's not only a deterrent, but it's a form of restitution that helps finance victim services at a time where state budgets are really strained and federal grants have been uncertain. So several states have introduced this type of legislation right now, and we're finding them to be really promising.
Very good. Senator